also interesting about the Dunes was that Bill Reddy was the music director. And he wrote some of the classic Buddy Rich charts, right? West Side Story, that was Bill. Channel One Suite, that was Bill. Bill was also from Idaho, where my dad originally came from. And the interesting thing about the Channel One Suite that's on the Buddies record is everybody wondered, like, why is this thing called the Channel One Suite? So unless you know the backstory, and Bill Reddy tells you, well, at the Dunes, we had this thing that looked like an octopus, and it would come out on stage as a big machine, would spin around. The dancers, half naked, would get in the thing, and it was spinning around. And this thing always broke down, right? So, I mean, it was typical Vegas showbiz back in the day, but that thing always ran on Channel 1. So, hence the title of the tune, Channel 1, is based on this monstrosity from the Folies Bergère at the, Casino du Paris, right? Yeah. The Casino du Paris at the Dunes. And in general, Las Vegas was a pretty decent place to live because the mob kept street crime down because it cut into business. So, with the exception of a guy getting blown up in Tony Roma's, parking lot, or some of the 55-gallon drums that are coming out of Lake Mead. Yeah, problem guys from the 70s. Anyway, it was an interesting and very decent place to live. And so, a lot of the musicians from the road bands of the day, Basie's band, Woody Herman, all that stuff, would get tired of being on the road, and they could come to Vegas and make a living making the same or even more money in a sit-down job. So there were so many musicians in town that they had full big bands. So I would go. Dad would hang out with his friends, and I would get up on the bandstand. Jerry would be sitting at the drums here. Jerry's ashtray was here, and then I was here. Yes, at 12 years old, I inhaled so much secondhand smoke, I'm surprised I'm still alive. But it was awesome, because I could watch Jerry play and ask him questions. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? And just absorb the craft from this guy. And Jerry was a genius at drum set orchestration. And I was like, oh, look at this. They're paying into a pension fund. I'm like 27. I'm like, I'm never going to die. I don't need a pension fund. Let me tell you, at 59, I'm going to die. I need a pension fund. Okay? So the fact that I could get union work that would pay into a pension, would actually give you money for paying your health insurance, like all sorts of stuff, was really awesome. So not only was I making great money, but I got to play 6 nights a week. I was like, wait, this is kind of like Las Vegas. Aha! So oddly enough, my life turned into like a version of doing what I was raised to do in Las Vegas out around the world. And I still to this day think that the theater drumming is as close as you get to Vegas, the old Vegas that I grew up in, right? I get to play multiple instruments, I'm playing multiple styles, feels, grooves, and I'm playing 6 nights a week. I got 8 shows a week, I'm playing 6 nights. I love playing, that's why I wanted to be a musician in the first place. So by doing these touring shows, I found a way to make a living playing and play all the time. And I get to go around to all these cool cities. And if it's a show that picks up locals, you get to play with all the best players in those cities. Ha-ha! So you go to LA, and you play in the Pantages Theater. Wayne Bergeron is a trumpet player. Andy Martin's the trombone player. All these guys who are legends at their craft, half the guys out of Gordon Goodwin's band, are there on the stand. Trey Henry, the bass player. You're like, hey, Trey, I loved you on that record. So you get to play with those guys. You get to play with all the heavies in Chicago. You get to play with all the heavies you get to play with all the heavies in Wichita. And you'd be surprised at how many great players there are all around the country, right? It's not just in the mythical places you're supposed to go to have a career. LA, New York, Nashville, in the old days Chicago, not anymore. Because the jingle business is all dead, right? So, like how to practice. Like Vic would say practice, but there would be no idea like how you're supposed to practice, right? Most of your generation now benefits from the fact that there have been a lot of studies done on how to practice, practicing efficiently, all sorts of things, links with neurology, how your brain works, all sorts of stuff. So you want to take advantage of like all that information you can get, because when you're in school, you can practice all the time. When you get out of school and you got to make a living, your practice time just disappears. But you got to keep your skills up, because you still have to play at the same level that you did when you were playing 8 hours a day, or 6 hours a day, or whatever you got. So my book deals with a lot of those types of situations, like slow practicing, being very careful, when you're learning a new drum set groove, input the information slowly and carefully, because your brain's like a computer. If you want to execute this crazy Vinnie Colaiuta thing, slow it down, break it down, be relaxed so that you're flowing, you're not getting in your own way, and learn it in chunks, right? And then put it together. So there's a bunch of books written, there's a bunch of stuff on the video, or on the internet. The Bulletproof Musician has a lot of stuff about how to input information carefully so you don't work against yourself. Because what I learned at the conservatory was I would practice 6 hours or something. I would probably do about 1 hour of useful work and at least 2.5 of working against myself. Drum chart from Pal Joey. Look at this, just chock full of information as to what you're supposed to do, right? It's like, okay, open up the stand, it's on the stand. Okay, apparently I'm playing cymbal with a mallet. I got a timpani note, and then something happens with drums. So it's almost like an archaeological dig, right? You're looking at this chart, you're like looking for clues. So you're like, okay, boom, I know Pal Joe is a jazz show, so this is probably like a jazz feel, right? This is what old school arrangers would write for a jazz feel, right? Stiff as a board, not even rhythmically correct, but it's basically, you're gonna play a two feel, right? Then, we get to Wicked. All right, so Wicked is the first show where the drum book is super orchestrated. All right, the orchestrated thing, even down to the fills. Like, oh look, I have to play a plan on that. So, Wicked was the first that really came out with these incredibly orchestrated parts. So, the trick is then, how do you insert your own personality into the show? Sharing the music. I love playing for people and having them have a great time. Like, it's just so beautiful. These people, this is their special night out, whatever. You know, they hate their job, blah, blah, blah. They come to the show, and you transport them to this magical, beautiful place. And it's just like, that's my job, right? I make people, I fill their life with joy. And I get to work in these palaces that are gorgeous. All these old theaters are like amazing, right? Stuff built in the 20s. It was the Able 3.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. And you know the story about why Ables are shaped like that?